welcome everyone. We are here with one of my favorite speakers of all time, spiritual leaders, Reverend Deborah L. Johnson, who's the founding minister and president of Inner Light Ministries, an omni-faith outreach ministry dedicated to teaching the practical application of universal spiritual principles to all of life's circumstances. She's also the founder and president of the Motivational Institute, which specializes in cultural diversity. And she's also a lifelong social justice activist and a prominent voice for compassion, equality, forgiveness, and reconciliation. So in other words, she works with individuals, she works with organizations, nonprofits, and even Fortune 500 companies. So one of the things that we love about her work, and we met many, many years ago at the SAN conference, right? If you recall, that was when we originally met, and she holds a vision of oneness, and that comes through in all of her talks. So if you tune into any of her videos on YouTube or on their own site, you'll see this vision of oneness come through. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and whatever else emerges organically, I guess. So thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Good to be with you both.
Yeah, we're excited to see you again. And we had talked about the TEDxBerkeley talk that you had given many years. I think it was 2016, if I recall, yes, that you did the talk, and that was on forgiveness.
It was.
Yeah. So what was that experience like for you, since that's kind of how we started the topic?
You know, it was really wonderful. I focused that particular talk around an experience that I had had of having interactions with the gentleman inside of prison and then a few weeks outside of prison who had been incarcerated for 26 years, but was innocent. And watching his process of forgiveness just really motivated me. And I gave some of the best tips that I've learned about forgiveness from people on the inside.
And people stood up.
Yeah, standing up.
There was a standing ovation, and that doesn't happen very often, by the way. Yeah, I feel like you get a lot of your work through your own experiences in life, but also in a way that this universal consciousness speaks through you in a way. It feels like that when we watch you speak anyway. So I want to bring up, I know they were written a long time ago, but this is from the Sacred Yes. Anthony and I were talking about this morning. Letters from the Infinite, which after a moment of surrender, you heard whispers. Now, this kind of reminds us, because also in this program actually is Neil Donald Walsh from Conversations with God. And so it felt like that when I was reading this, that you were getting these teachings from the divine that were coming through you. And one of those teachings, of course, which made me laugh, but also pivotal, is that drama is optional, which I love. Do you want to elaborate on that? And, you know, how do we rise out of the drama when we find ourselves stuck in the mud?
That's one of my favorite ones. that drama is optional.
Yeah.
And I want to make it plain that the drama that's being spoken of here is not what we would typically think of in terms of like theatrics. I love movies, and sometimes a play is the best way to portray something and get a message across. I'm a spoken word artist and do a lot of that myself. The way that drama is being used here is when there's a bunch of chaos, confusion, tension, cross purposes, ways in which we sometimes manifest things or get involved with other people in ways that just complicates things more than it needs to be complicated. We don't need a 2x4 upside the head before we pay attention. There's
You mean the dark night of the soul?
Yes. Well, yeah. And if you talk to people, they'll use the word something, like something told me something. And if you pay attention to that something a little bit more, you can save yourself a lot of heartache and grief.
Well said. Yeah, that was powerful. I think that you brought it up in one of your recent talks, right? Because don't you do sermons on Sundays and then you live stream them?
Correct.
I want to ask you a quick question also about the whisper.
Mm-hmm.
Who was whispering to you at that time?
There's a beautiful song called "A Whisper Is Enough" that I actually co-wrote with Valerie Joy. And you can find it, online or any of the places where you go to get your music. And it explains it extremely well, and it's very melodic. This whisper, there's an inner compass, there's an inner guidance, there's a connection that we have to life, the source of life itself, that's so much greater than we are. Some people call it intuition. Some people can call it a lot of different things. But what I know is that we're not just wandering out here in the wilderness, so to speak, alone. Each of us is given different kinds of guidance. For me, it was truly like a whisper, but I will call it signs more than anything. Signs, direction. Quite often, it's that something told me, and it's subtle at first. Sometimes it's so subtle we don't even pay attention to the guidance. We don't even pay attention to the information. Then it appears to get louder. It doesn't actually get louder. We just put ourselves through more drama, for us to be able to hear it. So that whisper is that inner something that's trying to communicate with us and open us up to our potentiality.
I have this very strange sense that this opening up for you hasn't been completed yet. Mm. There's a very strange feeling that I'm getting that you are still just a little bit closed, and you aren't putting a name on it because there's some fear there, and it wants you to open up. It wants to have a name. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what name it is, but I have a sense of what it is for you. And you're ready to open up fully. Mm. But there's a name. There's a particular name that's associated with this whisper that continues to whisper to you. And it wants to be called.
I concur wholeheartedly.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Ians calls it the noetic signature.
I refer to it as simply divine.
Yeah.
There is one thing that I see in you.
Yeah.
I see this. I see a rubber band or a head thing, and it turns like this.
The infinity.
I see infinity. And I see both masculine and feminine energies within this infinite amount of energy. The Sophia, the Yeshua, the Magdala. I see this infinite amount of energy, and I see neither feminine nor masculine, but I call it more seraphim, something that is just perfect. It doesn't venture too far away from God. That's what I see in you. That is what I hear, and that is the whisper that they give me right now.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah,
well,
beautiful.
Isn't that cool?
It's cool, and it is completely accurate.
Yes.
absolutely, completely accurate. It's not only who I am, it's where I stand. And I think it's an opening for everybody. There's a way that we have genderized the world into this masculine, feminine polarity.
Polarities, yeah.
But it's not a binary universe like that.
No, it's not.
And so much of the true power of what we need to know and to understand is in the complementary energies that are just the balance of one thing.
Beautiful. That's spot on, actually.
It is.
Yeah.
I have no words except perfect.
Yeah, really.
Perfectly explained.
I mean, I think, in the work that we do, the words and the wisdom that come through is to balance the masculine and feminine energy, particularly since it's been out of balance for so long in the world. But it's only because that language is what our linear minds can get our heads around. And so it's a way for us to understand getting back into balance. But it's really a stepping stone to that not even being necessary at all.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And the fact that our minds think in a linear fashion is part of the problem. It's more of an attribute of Western thinkers.
Yeah.
But in terms of the physics of life, life is not linear. Everything is cyclical. Everything is a series of cycles and cycles within cycles. Even for us to try to describe something linear, like year 1, year 2, year 3, between year 1 and year 2, there's winter and spring and summer and fall, and over and over and over again. There's January, February, March. Even within the week, there's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, from one day to another, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3. It's like there's cycles within cycles within cycles. And because we don't understand that, I think we get very confused sometimes about life and what the journey of living really is about. And breaking that habit of needing to construct everything in a linear lens, that's part of the spiritual journey. It's all circular, and hopefully our experience of life is more of a spiral than a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the understanding of that is it's a paradigm shifter. It's right up there. I call certain things a Copernican moment, where it's so huge that it realters our whole world view. And the sooner we get over thinking that everything is linear, life is going to be so much better.
Even if we don't understand it, I think that's part of our conditioning and our need to have all the right answers. I mean, I heard a sermon that you had given that was just great about asking better questions, right? And so part of it is that we compare everything. It's back to these polarities again, like, how did this happen to me, right? So moving from the victim question, and then we keep moving to better and better and better questions until it's more expansive, right? This kind of expansive consciousness, until we're in a place of, you called it spirituality as identity, not activity.
Right. Exactly. But I want to caution us from projecting out our Western colonized mechanistic thinking as the human condition by its essence. Okay? Because this sort of need to get it right, need to understand everything and all, that isn't necessarily the truth of who we are as human beings. I find that the more we get enamored with our intellect, the more we get enamored with our own sort of sense of industrialized progress, the further that we get away from our indigenous roots.
Yes, totally.
The more likely we are to express life like that and to think of life like that. But as we connect more as being a part of life itself, where life's not happening at us, isn't happening to us, but where it's actually happening not only through us, but as us, there's a different relationship that we have, and we don't feel that need to want to control everything or even to understand everything, because we're living in the mystery. And anybody who knows anything about anything, it's this paradox where the more you know you don't know. It's like a mathematician or a scientist, the more they know they don't know. You don't even know how much you don't know till you know a little bit. And so we take off the tyranny of timetables. We unleash ourselves so that we can actually be with and experience life, and not the overlay that's been put on us from cultures of domination and control.
Yeah, it's removing the conditioning and it's getting back to our spirit selves. And I'm glad you brought up our indigenous elders, because I feel like nature is something we've gotten so disconnected from. And kind of like you did this beautiful centering thing, right? Just, meditation, a prayer, whatever your belief systems are. I think that's a groundingness that we can all have, right? As human beings, or I should say as energy beings or spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yes.
And the more we can plug into that inner knowing and knowledge that our indigenous ancestors who are still here, right? And we ignore,
yes.
Right? The more that we get back in touch with that noetic or that internal compass that you speak of. Yeah. So well said.
I wanted to ask you a question. You spoke a little bit about the non-binary experience, or that which is happening. There's something going on this earth plane, as we'll call it. This coming to understanding of the union, of the oneness of who we are. A lot of times in spiritual circles, they refer to as an ascension, like we're going up somewhere. What do you call it? What do you think is happening to us as human beings at this particular moment now in time? Do you see this as we as human beings coming closer together, or are we going further apart? What's happening here? In your opinion, what do you think is going on?
And this times in humanity's evolution.
Well, I would say the answer is yes. and the reason why I say that is that I think what we're doing is that we're healing. And healing has a lot of processes to it. If we think of breath, for example, you're not really breathing unless you both do an inhale and an exhale. We live in this universe where in this perfect world of balance, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So it's this kind of inverse relationship. Is some things are going up, some things are going down. So the answer is like, yes, as we're coming together more and more, that means we have to deal with the ways we've been pulling each other apart. You can't heal what you don't feel.
Yeah.
So it has to emerge. It has to come up to reveal itself so that we can deal with it. If we don't realize that to the naked eye, it will look like we're going in the wrong direction. Or to the naked eye, it will look like the healing isn't happening. If you take a body, for example, in the process of healing, you might get pussy, you get a thick, scabby scar, it could look bruised. It doesn't necessarily like look pretty, but we live in this world where it's happening simultaneously. For every birth, there's a death.
Yeah.
For every birth, there's a death. And we have to live in the allness of it. I think this is part of very closely aligned to the commentary that I've been making about wanting to think of things as linear.
Mm.
We also want to think of things in a binary either or, when it's both. It's and. It's and. It's all happening.
You also spoke earlier, we were talking about when you did this talk about forgiveness, and, part of that is healing the trauma, right? Or whatever that is for us. And that you spoke about it, you used the analogy of a mirror effect. So I'm wondering if you're speaking about that now, like you can't heal what you can't feel, but like it's showing up and the mirror is being seen to be healed in a way.
Well, yes. However, all mirrors aren't equal.
Mm.
All mirrors don't have the same qualities. Okay. And a mirror can only reflect back what it can pick up. See? So what winds up happening is that too many of us are trying to get the sense of who we are looking in the mirror of another person's eyes. But they can't behold us. Their mirror can't show us back our majesty because they're not even seeing it within their own selves.
That's what it is.
So if you want to look in a mirror, make sure that you're looking in kind of like the divine mirror that can hold the totality of you. In the book that you reference, The Sacred Yes, which are these messages, these downloads that I get that come in the form of letters. And one of them in there speaks very specifically of mirrors, and I love the way it describes it. It's a chastisement of a lot of structural religious institutions. It says that puts funhouse mirrors at your front door.
Mm.
So people walk in, and with your funhouse mirror, you have distorted different aspects of them, blown it way out of proportion, like cut it out. And to many of us, particularly when we are in that unwillingness to forgive, not really understanding that the forgiveness is for our own selves, it's like we're standing in the funhouse mirror and exaggerating aspects way more than they ought to be, and losing perspective.
Mm. It's like, we're embracing the drama and we're not embracing our divine. It's like we're, I hate to just keep going back to the ego self, because it's more than just that. It's really that we can't love or see the divine in another if we can't see the divine in ourselves. Because you're talking about being able to hold the container in a way of the totality of universal consciousness or source or whatever that is. And we can't do it if we don't love ourselves. And if we don't see the divine in ourselves, how can we see it in another?
This is true. Everything about our experience is based on perception. Our experience in life is not the particulars of what happens. Our experience is how we name what happens. That creates the experience. In fact, I remember at this TEDx talk that we were talking about in Berkeley on forgiveness, I remember there was a moment I was trying to make this point, and I said to the audience, how many of you grew up with siblings? And, the vast majority of the people in the audience raised their hand. And I said, have you ever wondered sometimes, did you actually grow up in the same house?
Right.
Like, do you really even have the same parents?
We talk about that all the time, actually.
Yeah. So my point here is that we have a responsibility to reevaluate on a continuous basis how we name things. We have a responsibility to do that and to keep moving more into alignment with divine truth. Because however you declare life to be, so it is for you. Yeah. Life sucks, so it is. Life is good, so it is. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you are, that we have the power over that experience. And when we really think about it, the therapeutic models that we have, from going to counseling to recovery or 12-step programs, that's what they're doing. You can't unring the bell. They're not trying to undo the specifics of the circumstances, but they're trying to get us to see it with new eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
New eyes. And the freedom is in the new eyes, not when everybody and everything else changes.
Yeah, I mean, this, it begs the question, is there really a truth or a reality? I mean, there's a divine truth, but is there a reality, or is your reality just a series of perceptions upon perceptions upon perceptions?
With our human brains, our human capacity, I don't know how much reality we can actually we could actually hold and truly, truly understand from a cognitive standpoint where we are in this stage of human evolution. That doesn't mean that we don't have some hidden capacities that haven't quite been developed enough yet. What I do, and for the people that I teach and train, which is a fairly large number, I try to move away from asking them to define things. Because what is life? Can you define life? What is beauty? What is goodness? I don't know. It's like, I can't tell you what it is. However, things have markings. There's ways that they show up and manifest, and that that's what it is. It's like, what does love do? what does joy do? Not just what is it, but what does it do? So when they answer that kind of question, well, joy makes me feel more hopeful. You know, joy makes me feel more alive. Joy makes me feel more connected. Joy makes me whatever. It's the same way with truth. See, I contend that truth has certain properties and characteristics.
Yeah.
Okay. Truth is can't be patented. Okay. So it's everywhere present. Truth is all inclusive. It's all encompassing. Truth is transcendent of time and history and culture. Truth is redemptive. That when the truth really comes out and reveals, it leaves no one and nothing out. And it has a way of bringing everything back to its wholeness. You know, truth is transparent. It doesn't try to hide or camouflage itself. So what I ask people to do is to spend less time trying to come to a conclusive, definitive conclusion, because you can't define the infinite. That's the whole point. But am I walking in that direction? Am I getting closer and closer to that? Another one of my favorite lines in the Sacred Yes is, you don't have to know where you're going, that you know that you're going in the right direction when the things that you are engaged in and involved in are forcing the issue, so to speak, or, you know, whether it's like in a good way or a bad way, of you developing a deeper sense of the divine. Yeah, and I want to put it that way because we have a tendency to think of connecting with the divine as this nice, happy, you know, and we're often tiptoeing through the tulips and all of that. And we want to name anything that appears to be hard as bad, or that it shouldn't be happening, or that that's not the right direction. Now, let's say if it makes you grow, if it makes you stretch, if it makes you heal, if it makes you expand your capacities to be who it is that you are, if it's calling you up, calling you out, good chance you are headed in the right direction. If it's stagnant and vibrationally breaking you down, making you feel less, I don't even know if it's a word, but I call it like dyssynergy. Like synergy is when there's more, when people get together. I've had relationships where there's dyssynergy, where we were actually more not together.
So disconnect, so not connected.
Well, what this thing that I'm saying about synergy is that it's the synchronized energy. We're coming together. It creates something that's greater than the individual parts.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. And trying to figure out like what's the wrong direction. Being hard doesn't make it wrong. Being challenging doesn't make it wrong. Things happening that you don't like illness, divorce, death, doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. Those circumstances make us grow.
Yeah, they do. And they expand our awareness. I mean, even if we have to go through the dark night of the soul to get there, it's expanding our awareness and our consciousness.
Exactly.
Why do you have by your name Reverend? What is that?
Well, it means reverent and honoring a place of reverence. I am an ordained minister. Like if somebody were to be an officer, or it's a title that comes along with it. But the real answer to why I use that word is because that's what the spirit voice called me.
I'm getting to that point right now.
Reverend daughter.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So when these letters first started coming through, I was referred to as Reverend daughter. So when I decided to go on and use that title, it actually created quite the controversy.
I bet it did.
It created the controversy because I was finally finishing ministerial school. That's a long story. I was finally finishing ministerial school, and the group that I was with and studied with, it was a real no-no to use the term reverend until you had graduated, passed all their boards and certifications. And at that time, you had to also be working under what they called a letter of call, like an agreement with some group. And then you were allowed to use that title. But I knew when it started coming forward that I had to stand in it. So even out in the marketplace, you'll find that so many authors, personalities, they drop those designations. Like Deepak Chopra doesn't call himself like doctor anymore, or, you know, some people do, like a Dr. Phil, but so many times they drop it and just use their name. Now, I'm actually in the middle of a branding process right now. I'm actually on sabbatical and branding me, this new nonprofit that I'm starting, and blending in all of my life's work together. And it's been a very concrete decision, even with my books, to keep that word reverend in there. And I intend to.
I think that's a very good decision. There's still something that I feel coming through. This idea of reverend and what it means to you. There's a foundation here for you. It's very strong.
Yes.
Terribly strong, grounding into the earth and going straight into the heavens, if you will.
Yes.
What was the foundation of your instruction, of your teaching, of what you've learned?
From the whispers?
No. From your school where you became ordained. There's something that needs to come out that I'm trying to get to here. There's a foundation in a teaching. What was that?
Here's the thing, is that my spirituality is a real hybrid.
Yes.
It's a hybrid between my roots, my religious roots, and my adult understanding. So in terms of my religious roots, I was raised, and I'll explain what these mean. I was raised very fundamentalist, evangelical, charismatic, Pentecostal. Okay.
That's a mouthful.
Well, they stack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're Pentecostal, you are all those other things automatically, but you can be fundamentalist and not be any of those other things. So fundamentalism is, they're very literal, very literal. And I grew up in the Black church, one of the biggest denominations in Los Angeles. And it was this kind of infallible, book, all of that. And the evangelical part is the proselytizing, where you go out and you recruit. And it's considered that your sort of brownie points in heaven is even less about your life than how many souls did you bring to Jesus. The charismatic is the sort of loud and boisterous, high energy, really like rousing. The Pentecostal has to do with what they refer to as gifts of the Spirit. Things like speaking in tongue or prophesying or hands-on healing and these different kinds of things. So the gifts that I have now, I did not believe in when I was a child. I didn't believe any of it. I believe the healing because I saw that with my own eyes. Yeah. I believe that. But the speaking in tongue and particularly the prophesizing thing, no. So when I got my call to ministry at the age of 15, it really blew me out the water. And I ran from it. I wasn't going to do it at all. Mm-hmm. Part of it was because, particularly to my mother, it was her answered prayer that God was going to make me straight, heterosexual, that in order for me to answer the call to ministry, that's what that meant. And back in the 70s, that's what I thought too. So it was like, God, you got to come up with another plan because I will go to hell first. Because I figured if I try to be something that I'm not, that's hell. Why go to hell twice? So if I'm going to go afterwards, let me at least try to make the best of it here. Now I don't believe in hell and all that stuff. And not saying I really believed in it before, but there was this tension. Even to this day, that particular denomination will not ordain women.
Wow.
Let alone somebody gay. Amazing. Or openly gay. Let's put it that way. Come on now.
Yeah, right. Let's look at the Catholic Church for a minute.
Yeah. So this whisper and this prophetic voice and this stuff that I started to experience, wow, I didn't believe in it. And yet it was here.
It came to you.
Yeah, it came to me. So I had to do a lot of healing. Woo! I've had to do a lot of healing of my past.
Around the dogma, you mean?
The dogma, even what it means to even use that title, Reverend. Mm. There are these strategic moments. I just decide I'm not even going to go there because it conjures up in people's minds so many different things that, quite frankly, I don't even want to be associated with. My colleagues, I'll say my professional colleagues, throughout the centuries, have done some kind of stuff. They also have done some amazing, social justice and healing and caring work and all of the rest of that. but it is what I am. So making peace with that was something that I had to do. So that reverend thing, yes, it has really long, deep roots to walk in that and own it.
Yeah.
Because to the groups that I grew up with, I'm a demon. I'm a false prophet. I'm like the worst thing. I'm the devil incarnate, leading people astray.
Leading people to oneness.
I wanted to, I needed to ask you that question because it was so important to me. And as you know, I get this information too. Today, ask that question to her because it's the foundation of who she is in this lifetime.
Yes.
That's who you are. One more question. This Jesus figure, this Jesus man, as I like to call him.
That one.
That guy, that being. To this day now, what does this being represent to you in your life at this present moment?
At this present moment, Yeshua represents to me a living example of what it means to live in a Christ consciousness. A Christ consciousness of one that understands their connection to the divine. Because I grew up so fundamentalist, I learned a lot of Bible. And with all of the healing and whatnot that I've done, I'm actually a metaphysical Bible instructor in a couple of different seminaries, including my own alma mater that I grew up in. I literally do the what would Jesus do thing. Literally. When I'm up against circumstances and conditions, I ask myself, if I were an enlightened being and I knew my connection, what choice would I make now? Like, what would I do? The Jesus of my understanding would not be happy with what's happened in his name or these institutions that have developed that are calling themselves Christian, being the antithesis of the way in which he lived his life. So Yeshua is a guiding principle to me in a real kind of living fashion.
Good. Yeah. Can you see in the mirror me? Can you see me in you? Can you become me? Soul. Now, finally, openly, because that's what you've been waiting for. And I've been waiting for it too. Now, you understand who you are. You are me, and I am you. And you are here to preach love, forgiveness, divinity, oneness of all things. Perfect. You are in every form that you take. You don't venture too far from God. I am who I am. and I am you, and you are me, and together we are love divine. That was my message 2,000 years ago, and that's what it is now, and there's no difference. Now, I've been speaking with Anthony a little bit. I only want you to say who you truly are, and you are divinity divine. You are the representation of the divine feminine and the divine masculine coming together as one. And that is who you represent, and that is who you are, Reverend. I am with you always. I never leave. Good. That's all I have to say. Continue with your interview. I will step back now.
Okay.
I am who I am. Only love is here, because that is only who you are. Good. 1 second, please.
The energy is coming in and out much easier now. It used to be a very long process.
I could feel this energy of Yeshua saying,
Ask her this, ask her this.
ask her this, get to the point, let her know that she really is me and that I am her. And that every time she looks in the mirror, she must see me. She must become the avatar of what I represent.
Which is the Christ consciousness.
You are the walking form of Christ consciousness. And that is what this being wants you to know, this Yeshua. You are divinity incarnate, incarnation. That is who you are in this lifetime. And be very, very proud of that. You have nothing to hide anymore. All you can do now is shine like you've never shined before. That's what they say. You are perfect. It's absolutely beautiful.
It was amazing that you held him back as long as you did.
Yeah.
Usually when the energy is that strong, it'll just come through.
I couldn't control it before, but now I can control it.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad.
I could feel it. And yes, I receive it.
Good.
If you look at the cover jacket of the Sacred Yes, the way that Sounds True designed it, it looks like ancient script, a backdrop. And there's only one phrase. What they did is they took one of the letters and they put it so it looked like ancient script. I am with you always is what you see on the cover.
Wow.
That shows up. The day after I graduated from ministerial school in 96, I was gifted with a ring. It had my birthstone, and it was just a one-of-a-kind perfect fit. And inscribed inside that ring was, I am with you always. And I wore it for a couple of decades. Wow. And it's only been fairly recently, I feel like I was instructed to take that ring off, that I just had to be naked, like really, really naked. I was told that in my mind that ring represented like being married to my ministry, but I needed this bigger connection and take that off, like any restrictions. When you mentioned about the name earlier, and I just feel like I have to presence this because it fits in with all of this. I just had this discussion earlier today, breakfast with Rabbi Paula Marcus of Temple Bethel here in Santa Cruz. We hadn't seen each other in a while. And I was sharing with her that I had gotten this spiritual name. and it's a name I don't use, but I know that I have to stand in it. So the name is Emmanuel Zanetta Jordan. The Emmanuel was Yeshua's prophetic name.
Mhm.
God is with us. And when I first was given that name, I hadn't done enough healing yet. The fundamentalist, charismatic, evangelical, Pentecostal church that I grew up with, guess what it was named? Emmanuel.
Mhm.
Wow.
And I was taught God is with us, not God is with us. God is with us. And I know that I have to step into that name. God is with us. Zanetta, it was revealed years later, means to thine own self be true.
Mm.
And Jordan is about that going deep and crossing over.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah.
profound.
So it's all there. And that you're calling me out about the name, that's what I think was being called for.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
There was this
Because it wasn't
sense-
Anthony. That's
Right.
not the kind of questions.
Yeah,
he
no,
asked.
it's that. And do I stand in it? And do I own it?
Yes. There was a calling forth, a calling
Yeah.
out, a beckoning, a yearning.
Yeah.
I could say there was this yearning
Yeah.
for you to step into this incredible divinity of who you truly are, this Emmanuel, this Elohim, everything of who you are.
Christ consciousness,
The consciousness of Christos.
the living avatar. Yeah.
Yes.
What it was like growing up, there are no words for. It was a completely different world. I had not only no role models, but there was nothing that said that who I was could or should be. There wasn't a love song, a poem. There was just complete invisibility.
Mm.
And the things that I was taught, and it was such a push-pull because my mother was president of the Women's Christian Council for 45 years. So needless to say, my being gay in the Pentecostal church for her wasn't easy, particularly because she thought that God was holding her responsible for me as a minor.
Mm.
So it might have been okay for me to go to hell, but she wasn't going to hell. And the amount of fighting and tension and these messages, not so much from my pastor, but because he was vice president of the World Pentecostal Movement, he was gone a lot. And we were the mega church anchor in Los Angeles. We actually had a facility where all the convocations were had. So I got to see like all the traveling people from around the world with this like singular message that I was a mistake,
Mm.
that my very existence was satanic, that it's one thing to be considered inferior, like even a slave has a place, like of value added in the world. But this, that I should not even exist. And there was nothing. And at that particular time, we still had the sodomy laws. So you're talking 20 years criminality. The American Psychiatric Association hadn't changed its mind. We're talking, you're sick and you're depraved and all the rest of that. And you've got the church satanic. When you're 10, that's a lot. That's a lot. And the cities are burning in a flame and oh my God, with the watch rides and like just all of this stuff that was going on, all of this upheaval, like over and over and over again. That the audacity that it took to believe that I was okay. So I went the overcompensation route. So many people in my position went to drugs or promiscuity. So many of the men are dead now, from the AIDS epidemic. And I feel like I had to say that because I'm talking about it as though it's just so, as a matter of fact. But for what it has taken for me to give myself permission to be able to stand in this. I promised God at 15, I would do something about it by the time I turned 40. So literally the night before I turned 40, I started the Vision Corps for Inner Light. Literally. So it took me 25 years to surrender to all that, finally get myself through ministerial school, like start the ministry. And now it's been another 25 years. And everything is just, I can see the fruits of all the activist labor and how, not that we're in nirvana, but I'm not going to jail at the moment,
right,
unless the Supreme Court has its way next term. That the journey that this has been, to have the audacity to think, why not me? It's been a lot. It's been a long, hard road.
Mm.
And I'm here. And it's now.
And you keep showing up.
I keep showing up. And it's on. That's all I can say. It's that I'm stepping into it full gusto. And I'm okay now with the controversy. That all of that comes with it. I'm no stranger to that in terms of my activism and stuff that I've done through the years. But my mother died this year. And I think there was a part of me, as long as that she was still alive, as much as I've done, it just
Yeah, we understand.
Yeah. And now that they're both deceased, I feel her roots. I feel her call upon my life before I was born. And there's a new kind of freedom that I am experiencing now.
Yes. Reverend D, I want you to think about this too very quickly when you speak about your parents. There's always a reason for our parents. It's not a one-way street. We come into this life planning something. And as we tell our students, I'm going to tell you as well, our parents are not here to show us who we are, Reverend, but to show us who we are not.
Mhm.
And you are not your parents.
Mm-mm.
And they were here to show you that, to push you in a way that you couldn't comprehend at a time. They pushed you beyond your understanding,
yeah.
your limits,
Yes.
so that you could make it to the next level and far beyond that.
Yes.
And
It's true.
It's true.
Because all these tools in your toolbox, which is the anchoring of getting past each of these tragedies, right? These emotional disturbances, right? That you had to like push yourself through,
Yes.
right? To get to the other side. Now it's like if you talk to someone who's had a dark night of the soul, you can say, you don't have to say it. You just know, well, I've had 20 dark nights of the soul.
No, I agree. You
Pull
can't,
from your toolbox and say, I know how to manage that.
you can't lead people through territory you haven't been through. And I want to say definitively that I feel blessed to have had some of the best parents in the world. And I'm not them, and I'm such an incredible hybrid of them.
Yes.
In some of the best ways. And I am so grateful for them.
Mm.
And I can honestly say that they loved me unconditionally.
Despite all that. Yeah.
Unconditionally. And what I know now is that everything that they did was out of love. Not only that, but if they had not fought as hard as they fought to try to change me, I'm not sure I'd respect them as much as I do now.
Yeah. And it wouldn't have pushed you as hard as you needed to push yourself. And I feel like as souls, we all come in with these gifts.
Yes.
And the gifts are it's a cumulative, right? Over so many experiences that we've had on this earth plane, if you want to call it the earth plane, and so it's like your soul kind of knew that aspect of yourself. And so we choose our parents, siblings wisely.
It was a perfect contract. I have no complaints. And I know I wouldn't be the deep spiritual connection thing that we're talking about that I have, had it not been for my mother.
Yeah.
And my family, and just how steeped they were. My mother's understanding of Yeshua was different than mine, but I would say all the time, I've trained many, many people to be spiritual practitioners and all that. And I would say, to call my mother. If I'm sick, call my mother and let her pray the blood of Jesus over me. I would put my mother, one person, up against everybody I've ever trained for decades together.
Because she had so much faith, right?
Oh,
that was it.
Working with the earth. Working with the earth keeps you more connected to your indigenous roots and your indigenous self. Being out there with the field and nature and all of the rest of that, that's some hard work, but there's also something very grounding in being one that grows things, particularly that like grows food. There's a strength and a power that comes from that. Or like I say, sometimes the only book that, if a slave was allowed to read, that the only book that they were allowed to read was the Bible. And how that was the dumbest thing in the world that they could have possibly done. Because it was the stories of the Hebrews getting out of captivity that inspired these African slaves into thinking that they too could someday be free. It's like, maybe you should have chosen another book if you wanted to stay in power.
Yeah, and that's that connectedness to the earth that we have so lost. If you think about it, across cultures, it's part of every teaching.
Oh, yeah.
That interconnectedness to the earth, and that we are not separate from Gaia, we are part of her. You said, spirituality isn't something I do, it is my truth. I don't become spiritual, I am spiritual by nature. Knowing this, I stand on higher ground. And then this is the part that gets interesting. Vibrating on more elevated frequencies, I manifest their equivalents. Love this, right? You know where I'm going with this.
I do indeed.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by elevated frequencies, and then how people can manifest their equivalents in their day-to-day lives?
So everything is energy. Everything. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. It only changes form.
That's right.
Because it's energy.
Yep.
So we are always manifesting our equivalent. That the things that we are manifesting are the physical correlation of our energetic fields and vibrations. We make the mistake of thinking that we can improve our outer world by some kind of objectified materialism. But if you do that, one, you won't hold it, or you'll always be afraid of losing it because you aren't it. So what I try to train people to do is to manifest from the inside out. Recalibrate yourself so that you are vibrating with the frequency and the energy level of the things that you want to experience. Don't go after them. Allow them to be the byproduct of who you are. So if you want a loving relationship, for example, you need to be a loving person. The best way that I could explain it is looking at the English language. There's a way in which we use the same word for both the act of creating and the final product when it's done. So, like, we have a building, but the only reason why you have a building is because you went through the process of building. And we tend to forget that. Like, we want love, like a building, without the activity of love. We want peace, like it's a final thing, without being peace. Peace is a verb. We are verbs. We are not nouns.
I like that.
We are verbs. So if you want your outer world to be manifestation of more joy, more life, more livingness, more prosperity, more love, but then you have to become that. Then it's not something that you chase after. By all the natural laws of attraction, that's what radiates from you, and that's what comes to you in your field. There's always this match that's going on. It sounds cliche, but you got to be it.
Yeah, you really do. It is a mirror matching.
I love that, because as a speech language pathologist or a linguist as well, verbs are actions.
Yeah.
And we as energy are actions. And we must be that action that we wish to receive as well. Become one with that particular frequency, that action that we are manifesting. That is
Exactly.
perfect.
And people get frustrated. They're like, but only if this happened, then I would, opposed to, no, be it already.
Yes.
And then you will attract that into your life.
We reverse it.
Yeah.
We get it mixed up. And it's so important for everything, and particularly for social justice. I say all the time, no slave ever got on the freedom train. Not a slave. The only people that got on the Underground Railroad, the only people that got on the freedom train were people who already knew they were free. They looked around and saying, like, what's a free person like me doing here unjustly enslaved? I'm out of here. And I'm not going to go someplace to try to be free. I'm going someplace where I will be recognized for the free person that I already am. You start off with it. You start off equal. You don't, laws don't make you equal. You start off equal, and then the laws are the affirmation of that underlying equality. But if you don't already know that's who you are, and you're busy trying to get that from the outside world, it won't happen. It won't happen. You have to vibrate at that frequency.
Whew, man.
You've got to be it. And where I really, really got this the most was my 20-something years working with men in prison. And so many of the lifers that I've worked with are now out. And to hear them tell their stories, like I did in that TEDxBerkeley talk, they knew they were free inside.
Yeah.
They knew they were free inside.
Nelson Mandela also.
Yeah.
Knew he was free inside.
That's what he said. He said, freedom cannot be defined by 100 square feet of geography. So this frequency thing, and I really, anybody that's listening to this, I really want you to hear me. It's not about when the things changed. These slaves these enslaved people who got on the freedom train, it isn't because they had experienced freedom in the outer world. Maybe they never knew a Black free person in their lives. It's in here.
Yeah.
And I know what I'm talking about, or I would not be the person that I am today if Yeshua, the divine, if all of these great I am that I am, energetic fields, beings, weren't telling me that.
Yeah. And they do.
All along.
Yeah.
Yes. But do you hear it?
Yes.
Can we hear that voice above everybody else's voice? It's telling you all what you're not.
It's a really challenging thing to explain to people what frequencies and vibrations are. And you just nailed it. I mean, it's, how do we vibrate higher? We become that vibration that we want to live in. And that's also the power of community, which you have built and we have built. And it's so important for everybody to build these communities because it supports people in staying in that vibration. Well, that's a really good segue to the final thing I wanted to bring up. It's a great segue, actually. You spoke recently about everyone is our neighbor, right? And I'll put all the points up on the screen so everyone can see them. Struggle is no longer on the menu. There's no appetite for drama. We refrain from consuming social junk food. I love that one. But the one that was really, right? It's kind of a modern version of the most basic principles of love, really, love and oneness, but in modern language, that's one of the things I loved about it. But this one, we restore the human family by our fully living our humanity. So I think that would be a great thing to end on if you want to expand upon that.
Yes. Restoration is a process of recovery. It's a process of bringing something back to a more original state, undamaged state, so that no matter what the outer injuries are, whether it's physical, ethereal, material, there's underneath it this possibility to come back to the restoration. That's the promise of every spiritual tradition. Not that you get to have a rose garden or that you don't have troubles, but that you have resilience. Mm-hmm. That if you practice their principles or whatever, no matter what it is that life is coming your way, there's more to be had. So this is like the discussion that we were just having about frequencies and about vibration. That when we don't stand in our full humanity, we not only hurt ourselves, but we hurt everybody else. It's like dumbing down at its most benign, but at its most cancerous, it's when we're doing things that are unbecoming to who we are as a spiritual being. The only evil that you will ever find in the world is what human beings do to each other when they don't know who they are, when they don't know who the other ones are. You can't find evil in nature. You take people out of the equation, there's no evil.
Right.
So our actions aren't a measure of our goodness or our badness. Our actions are a measure of our awareness.
Yes.
Or our ignorance. So by our coming into and fully expressing our humanity, and this is something that has to be done on an individual basis. It's like literacy. You can't have a literate nation unless everybody learns how to read. So that act of us becoming more fully human has a rippling effect. And that's why I do this work. As much as I love individual people getting healed and whole and all that, that's wonderful. But I really do this work for the net impact that it has on us as a species.
Yeah.
That we're all going to go up a few notches or down. No, I'm really serious.
Yeah.
The anger that you hold,
Yeah.
the rage that you hold, the lack of forgiveness, it brings us all down, as we're seeing in this social political climate that we're in. But the converse is also true.
We don't have to feed that narrative by staying in our light, stepping into our light, being our light. It has an amplified effect for the collective consciousness.
Yeah, and it's within us.
Yes.
Okay, so we can't see ourselves as just flawed. If we're trying to figure out how to restore our humanity, it's to be more fully human, not be something else.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The answer's within, the answer's in the problem.
Yes. Yes. Most definitely.
Spot on.
Yes. That is so true.
I mean, the divine truth, when you feel it and you know it, because we were talking about truth at the very beginning, it just ripples through your whole body. You feel it, you sense it, you know it.
I think when we become the true, authentic self of humanity, that is when we truly find the divinity of who we are as human beings.
Yeah.
I want to say just something on closing today. When I was doing therapy with my last little child, there was something touching my ear. They're pinging, zzz, and I'm like, what is that? And I asked the father, I looked up and I said, is your grandmother, she's still alive? Yes. Is the grandfather still alive? Yes. And the ringing was still there, knocking on the door. And I said, I got in the car, I'm like, what's going on? What do you want? And now I understand. This is what they're telling me. They're saying, Anthony, something of divinity this way cometh. And that's how they prepare. So yes, and I get goosebumps because that is what they say. Something of divinity, Anthony, this way cometh. And it
was our time with
you.
With you.
That's what they wanted to say. That's why they were knocking on the door so hard. And I couldn't understand it, but I understand it now.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was incredible. Wow.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for being the light
Yes.
that you are.